Hello, hello, welcome everybody. I'm Jev, yes, Triple V. The accent, by the way, is purely Kiwi. I read old stories for children, so we keep this a family-friendly channel by having bad word blockers, banning bots, and preventing spam. So that means new followers need to wait a few minutes before they can join in the chat. Since these stories are so old, they're now in the public domain, which means they are free to read for anyone and by anyone, the way many Christmas songs are. The digital versions I read are from Project Gutenberg, and you'll find the link for that below. The physical ones are just old books my family has lying around. Sometimes I'll even show them to you. These, by the way, are live reads. Think of them as bedtime stories rather than actual audiobooks. You get the benefits of my mistakes, distractions, explanations, and terrible attempts at accents, along with plenty of chat and interruptions as we find out about things in the story. If you need to do work or chores, then that's fine. Just come and lurk. Please adjust your volume to suit. There are captions available if you have to be quiet or you have hearing challenges, but be warned, sometimes the captions aren't always that accurate. I am a member of the Codex, an awesome group of reading streamers on Twitch. People from many walks of life who share their love of reading, and you'll find links to the Codex reading team and our Discord server below. A special feature of the Codex Discord is the security channel for those of you who stream or moderate. You'll find lots of practical, useful information to help keep your stream and your community safe. So, hang around and come discover adventure with me. You never know what we'll find. And I think I'm here. I hope you are too. And I'm really, really, really sorry, everyone who is feeling too cold at the moment. And me sitting here in a sleeveless shirt. It is just way too hot here. It is 29.6 degrees Celsius, whatever that is in F units. There you go. Right. So, I think there's something I was meant to be doing. So there's something I was meant to be handling. Trying to remember this. Clicking over here. I'm clicking over here. And I still don't know why it is that I've got my keyboard sounds coming through into my microphone when I thought I had it filtered so it wouldn't. So I need to have a look at that sometime. Actually, I should write that down on my list. Now, this is tip number... Which tip number is it, children? So that one's been done. The cat cam works, although there's no cat there at the moment. There's just some coloured tennis balls. Keyboard filter. On mic. Right, that is written down. Way too warm. Way too warm. You are most welcome to actually look it up on Google or anywhere else you wish to and convert that to whatever temperature measuring system you have in your household or your country even, and tell us what it is for you. But yeah, I only think in terms of Celsius or centigrade. We tend to call it Celsius in New Zealand. And I can't remember, I know they're named for different reasons, but they both start with C, so that's why it's degrees C. Yeah, random stuff. And no, I don't even know why I had that page open. So we're going to shut that. That's sorted. Those are all muted. Yay. We are reading The Cuckoo Clock by Mrs. Molesworth, first published in 1877, which is a hang of a long time ago. So before we go any further, I will actually run a tips video for you. I don't know who we've got. Let's wait and see.
Hello, and welcome to the stream. I'm Jev. Now, let's talk about our 6 things to enjoy the stream. Number 1, get your drink. It can be water, whatever you like, but, take care of yourself and hydrate. Number 2, when I hydrate, you should as well. Did you hydrate just now? Number 2, get snacks or maybe a whole meal. It depends on your time of day and your own habits. Again, take care of yourself. Be hydrated and eat what you need to eat. Number 4, get comfy. Whether it's cooler or warmer, just something to cuddle perhaps. But be comfortable. That's also important. It's good physically and mentally. Number 5, have something to write with and write on. It can be paper, it can be anything you like. Memo, post-it notes, whatever you like. This advert not associated with post-it notes in any way, shape, or form. Disclaimer. Now, sit back, listen, and enjoy. Feel free to engage in chat. Do the puzzle over here or, down there somewhere. Play Jev Bingo. I do silly things like... I do silly things. Or you can spend pages and make me wear silly things like funny ears, like this one. Have a good stream.
And welcome back. Yes, I did actually manage to turn them on again. Captions. I'm trying to remember if I actually put into my folder where the videos are the captioned version of raccoons and their habitat.
because I do have it now, in which case I can move the captions so they're not in front of the videos. I'm not even going to worry about it for now. So how are you doing? What have you been up to? Is it really cold where you are, or is it just sort of like comfortable and normal, or what? Is there anything exciting going on where you are? Did you bring your water? Want to see those thumbs up? We do have a keyword, but the only keyword we have, whoops, I hit the wrong button there. The only keyword we have is shame. So there you go. If the book's shaming somebody, that's what we're using. We're taking it fairly casual, this story. I have water. I am using my water bottle to drink water from, because why not? I also have the shame bottle here in case we need to take a deep drink of shame. I also have a yummy drink here, totally not sponsored, as you can see. How's that? How's that for totally not sponsored? Pretty good. And I have some snacks. Let's see if I can get to my snacks. I can. Call this ASMR. This is food ASMR. It's candy if you're American, or sweets if you're English, or if in New Zealand it's lollies, because yeah, of course it is. So what we have, I'll just grab a few to show you. We have some gummy fruit of varying colours. Grape, peach and green apple, I think those ones are meant to be. These ones are done by a company which tends to use less of the artificial colourings and flavours, which is lovely, because I find that I don't react quite so harshly to them, you know, because you know that I have reactions to various things. I don't have any allergies, but I do get migraines, not microwaves and microphones. It starts with a my. I do get migraines from certain things. Too much sugar and the exhaust fumes of onions. Actually, no, it's just raw onion, the smell of raw onion, especially if I've eaten it and I'm still getting the smell from it up my throat. That can give me a migraine. Not nice. And a whole bunch of other things like that. So having something which doesn't use artificial colours or artificial flavours has a tendency to lower those other triggers. And if you are finding that you have issues with various things in your food, maybe you consider looking at what is in the food that you're eating that is causing those problems. If it's a natural ingredient, oh dear, you're probably just going to have to avoid that thing. But if it's something that you can avoid, yeah, I don't have to strenuously avoid those things, but there's a higher intensity of food colouring in lollies. There's a higher intensity of artificial flavours in lollies as well, because they're made of sugar and gelatin. Nobody wants to eat gelatin as their primary flavour of their lollies, do they? So yeah, just things like that. Look after yourself. That's what that's about. Look after yourself. Have you discovered anything new and exciting this week? Have you discovered something which is, oh no, like discovering that your body can't handle something anymore because age or exposure or anything like that? Have you had any wow or oh no moments? Do let me know. Do let us know how you're doing. I hope you're looking after yourself, regardless, because you do need to. You can't just rely on other people doing it for you. You need to do your own looking after yourself as well. That's part of being a grown-up, even if you just want to have others look after you. It's a sad part sometimes of being a grown-up. You have to do the looking after, even if it's for yourself. So we are reading The Cuckoo Clock. I'm just moving my microphone down so it's not distracting me on my screen up here. Yes, I've got very poor green screening at the moment. There's all this this grey rimming around here, that's the shadows because of where my light is compared with the green screen and the beam and the treat pot and all that sort of stuff. And one of my filter adjustments for my green screen is the fact that I can actually turn down the sensitivity to the green, to that way the green shows up on screen after it's done the green screen effect. So there you go. Makes it a little bit more tolerable. So you're just going to have to ignore the fact that we've got sparkly, weird things going on there and enjoy the view of London's Victoria Embankment instead. Concentrate on the bit that you can enjoy. So here we go. We are reading The Cuckoo Clock by Mrs. Molesworth, first published in 1877. Chapter 5, Pictures. Pictures. And the I looked it up. The epigram. Graph is to do with writing and gram is to do with, I don't know, I think it's an epigraph. And an epitaph is what's written on someone's tombstone, I think. So it's not epitaphs. So whatever it is, the poemy bit at the beginning of the chapter, which is meant to be so that you get a little bit of a feel of what's going to happen, goes thus. And she is always beautiful and always is 18. I don't know. Doesn't mean anything to me. When he got to the middle of the room, the cuckoo cleared his throat, flapped his wings and began to sing. Griselda was quite astonished. Okay, so what had happened last time? She had wanted him to provide fun for her because she was bored. And so he has taken her to the land where the mandarins are from. The mandarins, which have the little wee building and the little statues of the mandarins and their great aunt's saloon and their collection of lovely, interesting things. And they've gone through that building. She's wearing this cloak that he's given her. And they've been attending a ball. And everybody there nods because the mandarins by the door nod. So they're bobbleheads. Very early bobbleheads. So I'll read the end of the other chapter. Hush, said the cuckoo, and looked up. Griselda saw a number of mandarins in a sort of procession coming their way. When they got up to the cuckoo, they set to work nodding, 2 or 3 at a time, more energetically than usual. Then they stopped. The cuckoo nodded in return, then hopped off toward the middle of the room. Apparently the nodding is how they communicate. They're very fond of good music, you see, he whispered as he passed Griselda, and they don't often get it. That's right, because he's a bird. When he got to the middle of the room, we're carrying on at the beginning of the chapter now, the cuckoo cleared his throat, flapped his wings and began to sing. Griselda was quite astonished. She had had no idea that her friend was so accomplished. It wasn't cuckooing at all, because that's what we all associate with cuckoos. Cuckoo, cuckoo. It was real singing, like that of the nightingale or the thrush, or like something prettier than either. It made Griselda think of woods in summer, and of tinkling brooks flowing through them, with the pretty brown pebbles sparkling up through the water, and then it made her think of something sad. She didn't know what. Perhaps it was of the babes in the wood, and the robins covering them up with leaves. That's from a story. And then again in a moment it sounded as if all the merry elves and sprites that ever were heard of had escaped from fairyland and were rolling over and over with peals of rollicking laughter. And at last, all of a sudden, the song came to an end. So the way he was singing was drawing these pictures in her head. Cuckoo, 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 rang out 3 times, clear and shrill. The cuckoo flapped his wings, made a bow to the mandarins, and retired to his old corner. There was no buzz of talk, as is usual after a performance has come to a close, but there was a great buzz of nodding, and Griselda, wishing to give the cuckoo as much praise as she could, nodded her as hard as any of them. The cuckoo really looked quite shy at receiving so much applause, but in a minute or 2 the music struck up, and the dancing began again. 1, 2, 3. It seemed a sort of mazurka this time. Now, a mazurka is a style of dance, and you can look that one up. which suited the mandarins very well, as it gave them a chance of nodding to mark the time. Griselda had once learnt the mazurka, so she got on even better than before, only she would have liked it more if her shoes had had sharper toes. They looked so stumpy when she tried to point them. So in the mazurka, you point your toe. You put your foot out and point it as one of the moves in the dance. All the same, it was very good fun, and she was not too well pleased when she suddenly felt a little sharp tap of the cuckoo on her head and heard him whisper, "Griselda, it's time to go." "Oh dear, why?" she asked. "I'm not a bit tired. Why need we go yet?" "Obeying orders," said the cuckoo, and after that Griselda dared not say a word. It was very nearly as bad as being told she had a great deal to learn. "Must I say goodbye to the king and all the people?" she inquired. But before the cuckoo had time to answer, she gave a little squeal. "Oh, Cuckoo!" she cried, "you've trod on my foot." "I beg your pardon," said the cuckoo. "I must take off my shoe, it does so hurt," she went on. "Take it off, then," said the cuckoo. Griselda stooped to take off her shoe. "Are we going home in the pell?" she began to say, but she never finished the sentence, for just as she had got her shoe off, she felt the cuckoo throw something around her. It was the feather mantle. And Griselda knew nothing more till she opened her eyes the next morning and saw the first early rays of sunshine peeping in through the chinks of the closed shutters of her little bedroom. She rubbed her eyes and sat up in bed. Could it have been a dream? What could have made me fall asleep so all of a sudden, she thought. I wasn't the least sleepy at the mandarin's ball. What fun it was. I believe that cuckoo made me fall asleep on purpose to make me fancy it was a dream. Was it a dream? She began to feel confused and doubtful, when suddenly she felt something hurting her arm like a little lump in the bed. She felt with her hand to see if she could smooth it away and drew out one of the shoes belonging to her court dress. This is very Cinderella. The very one she had held in her hand at the moment the cuckoo spirited her home to bed. "Ah, Mr. Cuckoo," she exclaimed, "you meant to play me a trick, but you haven't succeeded, you see." She jumped out of bed and unfastened one of the window shutters, then jumped in again to admire the little shoe in comfort. It was even prettier than she had thought it at the ball. She held it up and looked at it. It was about the size of the first joint of her little finger. So from there out, just that much. That's how big it was. "To think that I should have been dancing with you on last night," she said to the shoe. "And yes, the cuckoo says being big or little is all a matter of fancy. I wonder what he'll think of to amuse me next." At some stage she's going to have to start learning to amuse herself instead of demanding being amused by others, I think. She was still holding up the shoe and admiring it when Dorcas came in with the hot water. "Look, Dorcas," she said. "Bless me, it's one of the shoes off the Chinese dolls in the saloon," exclaimed the old servant. "However did you get that, missy? Your aunts won't be pleased." "It just isn't one of the Chinese dolls' shoes, and if you don't believe me, you can go and look for yourself," said Griselda. "It's my very own shoe, and it was given to my own self." Dorcas looked at her curiously, but said no more. Only as she was going out of the room, Griselda heard her saying something about "so very like Miss Sibylla." Her grandmother? I wonder what Miss Sibylla was like, thought Griselda. I have a good mind to ask the cuckoo. He seems to have known her very well. It was not for some days that Griselda had a chance of asking the cuckoo anything. She saw and heard nothing of him, nothing, that is to say, but his regular appearance to tell the hours as usual. I suppose, thought Griselda, he thinks the mandarin's ball was fun enough to last me a good while. Really was very good-natured of him to take me to it, so I mustn't grumble. A few days after this, poor Griselda caught cold. It was not a very bad cold, I must confess, but her aunts made rather a fuss about it. They wanted her to stay in bed, but to this Griselda so much objected that they did not insist upon it. "It would be so dull," she said piteously. "Please let me stay in the ante-room, for all my things are there, and then there's the cuckoo." Aunt Grizzle smiled at this, and Griselda got her way, but even in the anteroom it was rather dull. Miss Grizzle and Miss Tabitha were obliged to go out, to drive all the way to Marybrow Hall, as Lady Lavender sent a message to say that she had an attack of influenza and wished to see her friends at once. Miss Tabitha began to cry, she was so tender-hearted. "Troubles never come singly," said Miss Grizzle, by way of consolation. "No, indeed, they never come singly," said Miss Tabitha, shaking her head and wiping her eyes. So off they set. What other trouble are they thinking about? So off they set, and Griselda in her armchair by the anteroom fire with some queer little old-fashioned books of her aunt's, which she had already read more than a dozen times, beside her by way of amusement, felt that there was one comfort in all her troubles. She had escaped the long, weary drive to her godmother's. But it was very dull. It got duller and duller. Griselda curled herself up in her chair and wished she could go to sleep, though feeling quite sure she couldn't, for she had stayed in bed much later than usual this morning, and had been obliged to spend the time in sleeping for want of anything better to do. It often helps you get better faster if you try to stay awake a lot. It takes a lot longer to recover. She looked up at the clock. Sorry, I had to double tap the page. "I don't even know what to wish for," she said to herself. "I don't feel the least inclined to play at anything, and I shouldn't care to go to the mandarins again. Although, to me, I'd be wanting to go and check to see if that little tiny shoe she's got is actually missing from one of the mandarins. And I shouldn't care to go to the mandarins again. Oh, Cuckoo, Cuckoo, I am so dull. Couldn't you think of anything to amuse me?" It was not near any o'clock, but after waiting a minute or two, it seemed to Griselda that she heard the soft sound of coming that always preceded the cuckoo's appearance. She was right. I think that was like the sound of the doors opening or something like that, not a voice. In another moment she heard his usual greeting. "Cuckoo, Cuckoo." "Oh, Cuckoo," she exclaimed, "I'm so glad you have come at last. I am so dull, and it has nothing to do with lessons this time. It's that I've got such a bad cold, and my head's aching, and I'm so tired of reading all by myself." "What would you like to do?" said the Cuckoo. "You don't want to go to see the mandarins again?" "Oh, no, I couldn't dance." "Or the mermaids down under the sea?" "Oh dear, no," said Griselda with a little shiver. "It would be far too cold. I would just like to stay where I am if someone could tell me stories. I'm not even sure that I could listen to stories. What could you do to amuse me, Cuckoo?" "Would you like to see some pictures?" said the Cuckoo. "I could show you pictures without your taking any trouble." "Oh, yes, that would be wonderful," cried Griselda. "What pictures will you show me?" "Oh, I know. I would like to see the place where you were born, where that very, very clever man made you, and the clock, I mean." "Your great-great-grandfather," said the Cuckoo. "Very well. Now, Griselda, shut your eyes. First of all, I am going to sing. And you are going to just pause a moment and hold on to everything that you are holding on to at the moment while I go and open those skylights a little bit more because it's getting warmer. 29.9. There you go. It's getting warmer. Hopefully that's going to help. The wind is coming from the same side as where my skylights are, and I don't want to have them open so far that everything gets blown around, but I also don't want to get cooked. So we'll see how we go. Where did I get to? Put everything in the right place again. First of all, I am going to sing. Griselda shut her eyes and the cuckoo began his song. It was something like what he had sung at the mandarin's palace, only even more beautiful. It was so soft and dreamy, Griselda felt as if she could have sat there forever listening to it. The first notes were low and murmuring. Excuse me. Again they made Griselda think of little rippling brooks in summer, and now and then there came a sort of hum as of insects buzzing in the warm sunshine nearby. This humming gradually increased till at last Griselda was conscious of nothing more. Everything seemed to be humming, herself too, till at last she fell asleep. When she opened her eyes, the anteroom and everything in it, except the armchair on which she was still curled up, had disappeared, melted away into a misty cloud all around her, which in turn gradually faded till before her she saw a scene quite new and strange. It was the first of the cuckoo's pictures. Just wondering if I know I have them, I just have to get them. I need to look at what pictures it's got for the book, the ones that I've got that I can show you. Specific books, Mrs. Molesworth, The Cuckoo Clock. Okay. I think we're okay at the moment in terms of pictures that are coming. She was everything except the armchair on which she was still curled up, which had everything else had disappeared, melted away into a misty cloud all round her. Sorry, I've got an itchy spot on the side of my nose. It's annoying. Everything around into a misty cloud all around her, which in turn gradually faded till before her she saw a scene quite new and strange. It was the first of the cuckoo's pictures. An old quaint room with a high carved mantelpiece. That's the bit of timber work above a fireplace. Sometimes the mantelpiece refers to just the shelf. Sometimes it's also the wall that's above it. An old quaint room with high carved mantelpiece and a bright fire sparkling in the grate. It was not a pretty room. It had more the look of a workshop of some kind, but it was curious and interesting. All round the walls were hung with clocks and strange mechanical toys. There was a fiddler slowly fiddling. That means playing the violin, folk style. A gentleman and lady gravely dancing a minuet, a little man drawing up water with a bucket out of a glass vase in which goldfish were swimming around, all sorts of odd figures, and the clocks were even odder. There was one intended to represent the sun, moon, and planets, with one face for the sun and another for the moon, and gold and silver stars slowly circling round them. There was another clock with a tiny trumpeter perched on a ledge above the face, who blew a horn for the hours. I cannot tell you half the strange and wonderful things there were. So it's someone who does clockwork stuff by the sound of it, not specifically clocks. Clocks are some of what they do. Griselda was so interested in looking at all these queer machines that she did not for some time observe the occupant of the room. And no wonder. He was sitting in front of a little table, so perfectly still, much more still than the unliving figures around him. He was examining with a magnifying glass some small object he held in his hand, so closely and intently that Griselda, forgetting she was only looking at a picture, almost held her breath for fear she should disturb him. He was a very old man. His coat was worn and threadbare in several places, looking as if he'd spent a great part of his life in one position, and yet he didn't look poor. And his face, when at last he lifted it, was mild and intelligent and very earnest. While Griselda was watching him closely, there came a soft tap at the door, and a little girl danced into the room. The dearest little girl you ever saw, and so funnily dressed. Her thick brown hair, rather lighter than Griselda's, was tied in 2 long plaits down her back. She had a short red skirt with silver braid around the bottom, and a white chemisette with beautiful lace at the throat and wrists, so that would be a style of top that she's wearing, a little blouse. And over that again a black velvet bodice, also trimmed with silver, and she had a great many trinkets, necklaces and bracelets and earrings, and a sort of little silver coronet. No, it was not like a coronet. It was a band with a square piece of silver fastened so as to stand up at each side of her head, something like a horse's blinkers, only they were not placed over her eyes. That's an odd thing she's wearing. I wonder why. She made quite a jingle as she came into the room, and the old man looked up with a smile of pleasure. "Well, my darling, and are you all ready for your fate?" he said, and though the language in which he spoke was quite strange to Griselda, she understood his meaning perfectly. "Yes, dear grandfather, and isn't my dress lovely?" said the child. "I should be so happy if only you were coming too, and would get yourself a beautiful velvet coat, like Mynheer Van Hoyten." The old man shook his head. "I have no time for such things, my darling," he replied, "and besides I am too old. I must work hard to make money for my pet when I am gone, that she may not be dependent on the bounty of those English sisters." So this is her grandmother. "But I won't care for it more for money when you are gone, grandfather," said the child, her eyes filling with tears. "I would rather just go on living in this little house, and I'm sure the neighbours would give me something to eat, and then I could hear all your clocks ticking and think of you. I don't want you to sell all your wonderful things for money for me, grandfather. They would remind me of you, and money wouldn't." "Not all, Sibylla, not all," said the old man. "The best of all, the chef d'oeuvre of my life, shall not be sold. It shall be yours, and you will have in your possession a clock that crowned heads might seek in vain to purchase." I bet this is the cuckoo clock that we know from her study room. Sorry, itchy eye. The eyelid. Carrying on. His dim old eyes brightened, and for a moment he sat erect and strong. "Do you mean the cuckoo clock?" said Sibylla in a low voice. "Yes, my darling, the cuckoo clock, the crowning work of my life, a clock that shall last long after I and perhaps thou, my pretty child, are crumbling into dust. A clock that shall last long after I, and perhaps thou, my pretty child, are crumbling into dust. A clock that shall last to tell my great-grandchildren to many generations that the old Dutch mechanic was not altogether to be despised." Sibylla sprang into his arms. "You are not to talk like that, little grandfather," she said. "I shall teach my children and my grandchildren to be so proud of you. Oh, so proud as I am of you, little grandfather." "Gently, my darling," said the old man as he placed carefully on the table the delicate piece of mechanism he held in his hand and tenderly embraced the child. "Kiss me once again, my pet, then thou must go. Thy little friends will be waiting." As he said these words, the mist slowly gathered again before Griselda's eyes, the first of the cuckoo's pictures fading from her sight. And I'm going to have a drink of water, so you will too. I'm just checking to see if there was anything else I needed to be seeing to show you guys. No, that was it. Cool. We'll carry on. When she looked again, the scene was changed, but this time it was not a strange one, though Griselda had gazed at it for some moments before she recognised it. It was the great saloon. But it looked very different from what she had ever seen it. 40 years or so make a difference in rooms, in rooms as well as people. The faded yellow damask hangings were rich and brilliant, which means they're now, as it said, faded. So they're pale with age. The colour intensity is gone. But back then they weren't. There were bouquets of lovely flowers arranged about the tables. Wax lights were sending out their brightness in every direction, and the room was filled with ladies and gentlemen in gay attire. Among them, after a time, Griselda remarked 2 ladies, no longer very young, but still handsome and stately, and something whispered to her that they were her 2 aunts, Miss Grizzle and Miss Tabitha. Poor aunts, she'd said softly to herself, how old they have grown since then. But she did not long look at them. Her attention was attracted by a much younger lady, a mere girl she seemed, but oh so sweet and pretty. She was dancing with a gentleman whose eyes looked as if they saw no one else, and she herself seemed brimming over with youth and happiness. Her very steps had joy in them. Well, Griselda, whispered a voice she knew was the Cuckoo's, so you don't like to be told you are like your grandmother, eh? Griselda turned round sharply to look for the speaker, but he was not to be seen, and when she turned again, the picture of the great saloon had faded away. One more picture. Griselda looked again. She saw before her a country road in full summertime. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, the trees covered with their bright green leaves. Everything appeared happy and joyful. But at last, in the distance, she saw slowly approaching a group of a few people, all walking together, carrying in their centre something long and narrow, which, though the black cloth covering it was almost hidden by the white flowers with which it was thickly strewn, Griselda knew to be a coffin. It was a funeral procession, and in the place of chief mourner, with pale, set face, walked the same young man whom Griselda had last seen dancing with the girl Sibylla in the great saloon. The sad group passed slowly out of sight, but as it disappeared there fell upon the ear the sounds of sweet music, lovelier far than she had heard before, lovelier than the magic cuckoo's most lovely songs, and somehow in the music it seemed to the child's fancy there were mingled the soft strains of a woman's voice. It is Sibylla singing, thought Griselda dreamily, and with that she fell asleep again. When she woke, she was in the armchair by the anteroom fire, everything around her looking just as usual, the cuckoo clock ticking away calmly and regularly. Had it been a dream only? Griselda could not make up her mind. But I don't see that it matters if it was, she said to herself. If it was a dream, the cuckoo sent it to me all the same, and I thank you very much indeed, Cuckoo, she went on, looking up at the clock. The last picture was rather sad, but still it was very nice to see it, and I thank you very much, and I'll never say again that I don't like to be told I'm like my dear, pretty grandmother. The cuckoo took no notice of what she said, but Griselda did not mind. She was getting used to his ways. I expect he hears me quite well, she thought, and even if he doesn't, it's only civil to try to thank him. She sat still contentedly enough, thinking over what she had seen and trying to make more pictures for herself in the fire. Have you done that? You're looking in the fire, watching the flames, and letting your imagination play and draw pictures with what you're seeing. Then there came faintly to her ears the sound of carriage wheels, opening and shutting of doors, a little bustle of arrival. My aunts must have come back, thought Griselda, and so it was. Where is it? Somewhere here. There it is. That's the one I want. And I need to put it to the one that we are doing. That's the one we had last time. I'll just turn off, that's why we had that off. I'll just turn off the keyword so you can see it. So that was her. That was her in the bird cloak with the cuckoo leading her into the mandarin's house, remember? And this is the one that we have for now. There she is in the armchair. She's got a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, or a shawl or something like that. And she's keeping warm in front of the fire. She's sitting up in the armchair. Here come the aunts coming into the room. My aunts must have come back, thought Griselda, and so it was. In a few minutes, Miss Grizzle, closely followed by Miss Tabitha, appeared at the anteroom door. That's why they're coming into the room. "Well, my love," said Miss Grizzle anxiously, "and how are you? Has the time seemed very long while we were away?" "Oh, no, thank you, Aunt Grizzle," replied Griselda. "Not at all. I've been quite happy, and my cold's ever so much better, and my headache's quite gone." "Come, that is good news," said Miss Grizzle. "Not that I am exactly surprised," she continued, turning to Miss Tabitha, "for there really is nothing like tansy tea for a feverish cold." Tansy's a plant, a wild plant, sometimes used as a herb. "Nothing," agreed Miss Tabitha. "There really is nothing like it." "Aunt Grizzle," said Griselda after a few moments' silence, "was my grandmother quite young when she died?" "Yes, my love, very young," replied Miss Grizzle with a change in her voice. "And was her husband very sorry?" pursued Griselda. "Heartbroken," said Miss Grizzle. "He did not live long after, and then, you know, my dear, your father was sent to us to take care of, and now he has sent you, the third generation of young creatures, confided to our care." "Yes," said Griselda, "my grandmother died in the summer when all the flowers were out, and she was buried in a pretty country place, wasn't she?" "Yes," said Miss Grizzle, looking rather bewildered. How does she know this? "And when she was a little girl she lived with her grandfather, the old Dutch mechanic," continued Griselda, unconsciously using the very words she had heard in her vision. "He was a nice old man, and how clever of him to have made the cuckoo clock, and such lots of other pretty wonderful things. I don't wonder little Sibylla loved him. He was so good to her. But oh, Aunt Grizzle, how pretty she was when she was a young lady, that time that she danced with my grandfather in the great saloon, and how very nice you and Aunt Tabitha looked then too." Miss Grizzle held her very breath in astonishment, and no doubt if Miss Tabitha had known she was doing so, she would have held hers too. But Griselda lay still, gazing at the fire, quite unconscious of her aunt's surprise. That's why she's looking a little bit absent-minded here. She's looking at the fire. "Your papa told you all these stories, I suppose, my dear," said Miss Grizzle at last. "Oh, no," said Griselda dreamily. "Papa never told me anything like that. Dorcas told me a very little, I think. At least, she made me want to know, and I asked the cuckoo, and then, you see, he showed me it all. It was so pretty." Miss Grizzle glanced at her sister. "Tabitha, my dear," she said in a low voice, "do you hear?" And Miss Tabitha, who really was not very deaf when she set herself to hear, nodded in awestruck silence. "Tabitha," continued Miss Grizzle in the same tone, "it is wonderful. Ah, yes, how true it is, Tabitha, that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy." For Miss Grizzle was a well-read old lady, you see. "And from the very first, Tabitha, we always had a feeling that the child was strangely like Sibylla." "Strangely like Sibylla," echoed Miss Tabitha. "May she grow up as good, if not quite as beautiful. That we could scarcely expect. And may she be longer spared to those that love her," added Miss Grizzle, bending over Griselda, while 2 or 3 tears slowly trickled down her aged cheeks. "See, Tabitha, the dear child is fast asleep. How sweet she looks. I trust by tomorrow morning she will be quite herself again. Her cold is so much better." Interesting. Not what I was expecting. I don't know about you, but not what I was expecting. I'm just going to have a wee drink of this unknown, unsponsored drink. Right. Chapter 6. Rubbed the wrong way. For now and then there comes a day when everything goes wrong, is the epitaph, epigram, whatever it is. Why don't I just look them up? And then I can, if I speak it out loud, I might remember which one's which. Not epitaph. Epigraph. Epigraph and epigram. An epigram is a short, witty, clever, or satirical saying or poem, while an epigraph is a quotation, phrase, or poem placed at the beginning of a book chapter or other text to set the tone or theme. So epigraph is the one that's in a book because it's all written down. I'm going to have to use that as the way to remember it. So we'll try that. So that was the epigraph. Griselda's cold was much better the next day. Oh, sorry, I'm going to read that exactly as it says it. Griselda's cold was much better by tomorrow morning. In fact, I might almost say it was quite well. But Griselda herself did not feel quite well, and saying this reminds me that it is hardly sense to speak of a cold being better or well, for a cold's being well means that it was not there at all, out of existence in short, and if a thing is out of existence, how can we say anything about it? I have no idea where this woman is going. This is all very confusing. Why is my eyelid suddenly itchy? And it's not the one I was itching before. I don't know. Children, I feel quite in a hobble. I cannot get my mind straight about it. Please think it over and give me your opinion. In the meantime, I will go on about Griselda. So the author has just been speaking to us, the listeners, or readers, children. She felt just a little ill, a sort of feeling that sometimes is rather nice, sometimes very extremely much the reverse. Oh, we can put that picture off now. When I find it again... Not that one, that's the camera. That one. And we can put keywords on again. So far we haven't had too much shame stuff in this one. Very extremely much the reverse. She felt in the humour for being petted and having beef tea. In other words, spoilt. Looked after well. Beef tea and jelly and sponge cake with her tea, and for a day or two this was all very well. She was petted and she had lots of beef tea and jelly and grapes and sponge cakes and everything nice, for her aunts, as you must have seen by this time, were really very, very kind to her in every way in which they understood how to do so, or how to be so. But after a few days of the continual petting and the beef tea and the jelly and all the rest of it, it occurred to Miss Grizzle, who had a good large bump of common sense, that it might be possible to overdo this sort of thing. "Tabitha," she said to her sister when they were sitting together in the evening after Griselda had gone to bed, "Tabitha, my dear, I think the child is quite well again now. It seems to me it would be well to send a note to good Mr. Kneebreeches to say that she will be able to resume her studies the day after tomorrow." "The day after tomorrow," repeated Miss Tabitha. "The day after tomorrow, to say that she will be able to resume her studies the day after tomorrow. Oh yes, certainly it would be very well to send a good note to good Mr. Kneebreeches, my dear Grizzle." "I thought you would agree with me," said Miss Grizzle with a sigh of relief, as if poor Miss Tabitha during the last half-century had ever ventured to do anything else. Getting up to fetch her writing materials as she spoke. "It is such a satisfaction to consult together about what we do. I was only a little afraid of being hard upon the child, but as you agree with me, I have no longer any misgiving." "Any misgiving? Oh dear, no," said Miss Tabitha. "You have no reason for any misgiving, I am sure, my dear Grizzle." So the note was written and dispatched, and the next morning, when about 12 o'clock, Griselda made her appearance in the little drawing-room where her aunts usually sat, looking, it must be confessed, very plump and rosy for an invalid, because she's been feeding well, Miss Grizzle broached the subject. I have written to request Mr. Kneebreeches to resume his instructions tomorrow, she said quietly. I think you are quite well again now, so Dorcas must wake you at your usual hour. Griselda had been settling herself comfortably on a corner of the sofa. She'd got a nice book to read, which her father, hearing of her illness, had sent to her by post, and she was looking forward to the tempting plate full of jelly which Dorcas had brought for her luncheon every day since she had been ill. Altogether, part of it would be because usually that sort of jelly is fruit-flavoured and sweetened, and there's no effort in eating it, but it's quite delicious. Although she was feeling very lazy-easy and contented, altogether she was feeling very lazy-easy and contented. Her aunt's announcement felt like a sudden downpour of cold water or rush of east wind. She sat straight up on her sofa and exclaimed in a tone of great annoyance, "Oh, Aunt Grizzle!" "Well, my dear," said Miss Grizzle placidly, "I wish you wouldn't make me begin lessons again just yet. I know they'll make my head ache again, and Mr. Kneebreeches will be so cross. I know he will, and he's so horrid when he's cross." She's slipping back into her self-centered ways. "Hush," said Miss Grizzle, holding up her hand in a way that reminded Griselda of the cuckoo's favourite obeying orders. Just then, too, in the distance, the anteroom clock struck 12. "Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo!" On it went. Griselda could have stamped with irritation, but somehow, in spite of herself, she felt compelled to say nothing. She muttered some not very pretty words, coiled herself around on the sofa, opened her book, and began to read. But it was not as interesting as she had expected. She had not read many pages before she began to yawn, and she was delighted to be interrupted by Dorcas and the jelly. But the jelly was not as nice as she had expected either. She tasted it and thought it was too sweet, and when she tasted it again it seemed too strong of cinnamon, and the third taste seemed too strong of everything. She laid down her spoon and looked about her discontentedly. "What is the matter, my dear?" said Miss Grizzle. "Is the jelly not to your liking?" Yes, when you start getting discontent about things, it flavours everything. It changes your perception. "I don't know," said Griselda shortly. She ate a few spoonfuls and then took up her book again. Miss Grizzle said nothing more, but to herself she thought that Mr. Kneebreeches had not been recalled any too soon. All day long it was much the same. Nothing seemed to come right to Griselda. It was a dull, cold day. Excuse me. A dull, cold day, what is called a black frost, not a bright, clear, pretty cold day, but the sort of frost that really makes the world seem dead, makes it almost impossible to believe that there will ever be warmth and sound and growingness again. Late in the afternoon, Griselda crept up to the anteroom and sat down by the window. Outside it was nearly dark, and inside it was not much more cheerful, for the fire was nearly out and no lamps were lighted. Only the cuckoo clock went on ticking as briskly as usual. "I hate winter," said Griselda, pressing her cold little face against the colder window pane. "I hate winter, and I hate lessons. I would give up being a person in a minute if I might be what would I best be like? Oh yes, I know, a butterfly. Butterflies never see winter, and they certainly never have any lessons of any kind of work to do. I hate musting to do anything." Butterflies don't live very long. "Cuckoo!" rang out suddenly above her head. It was only 4 o'clock striking, and as soon as he had told it, the cuckoo was back behind his doors again in an instant, just as usual. There was nothing for Griselda to feel offended at, but somehow she got quite angry. "I don't care what you think, Cuckoo," she exclaimed defiantly. "I know you came out on purpose just now, but I don't care. I do hate winter, and I do hate lessons, and I do think it would be nicer to be a butterfly than a little girl." Like she's got a hard life. In her secret heart, I fancy she was half in hopes that the cuckoo would come out again and talk things over with her. Even if he were to scold her, she felt that it would be better than sitting there alone with nobody to speak to, which was very dull work indeed. At the bottom of her conscience there lurked the knowledge that what she should be doing was to be looking over her last lessons with Mr. Kneebreeches and refreshing her memory for the next day, but alas, knowing one's duty is by no means the same thing as doing it. And Griselda sat on by the window doing nothing but grumble and work herself up into a belief that she was one of the most to-be-pitied little girls in all the world. So that by the time Dorcas came to call her to tea, I doubt if she had a single pleasant thought or feeling left in her heart. Things grew no better after tea, and before long Griselda asked if she might go to bed. That's unusual. She was so tired, she said, and she certainly looked so, for ill humour and idleness are excellent tirers. They will make you tired. If you're in a bad mood, you'll get tired more easily. Definitely. And will soon take the roses out of a child's cheeks and the brightness out of her eyes. She held up her face to be kissed by her aunts in a meekly reproachful way, which made the old ladies feel quite uncomfortable. Why is she... She's telling them off with her attitude. I am by no means sure that I have done right in recalling Mr. Kneebreeches so soon, Sister Tabitha, remarked Miss Grizzle uneasily when Griselda had left the room, even though just before she had been thinking, I should have done it sooner. But Miss Tabitha was busy counting her stitches and did not give full attention to Miss Grizzle's observations, so she just repeated placidly, Oh yes, Sister Grizzle, you may be sure you have done right in recalling Mr. Kneebreeches. I'm glad you think so, said Miss Grizzle, with again a little sigh of relief. I was only distressed to see the child looking so white and tired. Upstairs, Griselda was scurrying into bed. There was a lovely fire in her room. Fancy that! Was she not a poor neglected little creature? But even this did not please her. She was too cross to be pleased with anything. Oh dear. She's in spoilt brat mode. This is the sort of place of the attitude of living from that the girl in The Secret Garden, what was her name? I can't remember. That was what she was like at the beginning of the book, because she'd been brought up that way, that everything was focused on her. So Griselda has actually got to a point where she's starting to focus on herself again, like when she first arrived. She was too cross to be pleased with anything, too cross to wash her face and hands or let Dorcas brush her hair out nicely as usual, too cross, alas, to say her prayers. She just huddled into bed, huddling up her mind in an untidy hurry and confusion, just as she left her clothes in an untidy heap on the floor. She would not look into herself, was the truth of it. She shrank from doing so because she knew things had been going on in that silly little heart of hers in a most unsatisfactory way all day, and she wanted to go to sleep and forget all about it. She did not go to sleep. Very quickly, too. Oh, no, let's withdraw that statement. She did go to sleep. Very quickly, too. That's better. No doubt she really was tired with crossness and doing nothing, and she slept very soundly. When she woke up, she felt so refreshed and rested that she fancied it must be morning. It was dark, of course, but that was to be expected in midwinter, especially as the shutters were closed. I wonder, thought Griselda, I wonder if it really is morning. I should like to get up early. I went so early to bed. I think I'll just jump out of bed and open a chink of the shutters. I'll see at once if it's nearly morning, by the look of the sky. She was up in a minute, feeling her way across the room to the window, and without much difficulty she found the hook of the shutters, unfastened it, and threw one side open. Ah, no, there was no sign of morning to be seen. There was moonlight, but nothing else, and not so very much of that, for the clouds were scurrying across the orbed maiden's face at such a rate, one after the other, that the light was more like a number of pale flashes than the steady cold shining of most frosty moonlight nights. They were going to be No, there was going to be a change of weather, and the cloud armies were collecting together from all quarters. That was the real explanation of the hurrying and scurrying Griselda saw overhead. But this, of course, she did not understand. She only saw that it looked wild and stormy, and she shivered a little, partly with cold, partly with a half-frightened feeling that she could not have explained. "I'd better go back to bed," she said to herself, "but I'm not a bit sleepy." She was just drawing to the shutter again, just closing it, when something caught her eye. And she stopped short in surprise. A little bird was outside on the windowsill, a tiny bird crouching in close to the cold glass. Griselda's kind heart was touched in an instant. Cold as she was, she pushed back the shutter again, and drawing a chair forward to the window, managed to unfasten it. It was not a very heavy one, and to open it wide enough to slip her hand gently along to the bird. It did not start or move. "Can it be dead?" thought Griselda anxiously. But no, it was not dead. It let her put her hand around it and draw it in, and to her delight she felt it was soft and warm, and it even gave a gentle peck on her thumb. "Poor little bird, how cold you must be," she said kindly. But to her amazement, no sooner was the bird safely inside the room than it managed cleverly to escape from her hand. It fluttered quietly up onto her shoulder and sang out in a soft but cheery tone, "Cuckoo, cuckoo, cold, did you say, Griselda? Not so very, thank you." Griselda stepped back from the window. "It's you, isn't it?" she said rather surlily. Her tone seemed to infer that she had taken a great deal of trouble for nothing. "Of course it is, and why shouldn't it be? You're not generally so sorry to see me. What's the matter?" "Nothing's the matter," replied Griselda, feeling a little ashamed of her want of civility. "Only, you see, if I'd known it was you—" She hesitated. So she was going to leave the bird outside in the cold if she'd known it was him? I don't think that's very nice, girl. I hope you're drinking your water. "You wouldn't have clambered up and hurt your poor fingers in opening the window if you'd known it was me, is that it, eh?" said the cuckoo. Somehow, when the cuckoo said "eh" like that, Griselda was obliged to tell just what she was thinking. "No, I wouldn't have needed to open the window," she said. "You can get in or out whenever you like. You're not a real bird. Of course you were just tricking me, sitting out there and pretending to be a starved robin." There was a little indignation in her voice, and she gave her head a toss which nearly upset the cuckoo. Dear me," exclaimed the cuckoo. "You have a great deal to complain of, Griselda. Your time and strength must be very valuable for you to regret so much having wasted a little of them on me." Griselda felt her face grow red. What did he mean? Did he know how yesterday had been spent? She said nothing, but she drooped her head, and one or two tears came slowly creeping up to her eyes. "Child," said the cuckoo, suddenly changing his tone, "you are very foolish. Is a kind thought or action ever wasted? Can your eyes see what such good seeds grow into? They have wings, Griselda. Kindnesses have wings and roots. Remember that. Wings that never droop, and roots that never die. What do you think I came and sat outside your window for?" "Cuckoo," said Griselda humbly, "I am very sorry." "Very well," said the cuckoo. "We'll leave it for the present. I have something else to see about. Are you cold, Griselda?" "Very," she replied. "I would very much like to go back to bed, Cuckoo, if you please, and there's plenty of room for you too if you'd like to come in and get warm." "There are other ways of getting warm besides going to bed," said the cuckoo. "A nice brisk walk, for instance. I was going to ask you to come out into the garden with me." Griselda almost screamed. "Out into the garden? Oh, Cuckoo!" she exclaimed. "How can you think of such a thing? Such a freezing cold night. Oh, no, indeed, Cuckoo, I couldn't possibly." "Very well, Griselda," said the cuckoo. "If you haven't yet learnt to trust me, there is no more to be said. Good night." He flapped his wings, cried out "Cuckoo" once more, once only, flew across the room, and almost before Griselda understood what he was doing, had disappeared. She hurried after him, stumbling against the furniture in her haste, and by the uncertain light, the door was not open, but the cuckoo had got through it. By the keyhole, I dare say, thought Griselda. He can scrooge himself up anyway, for a faint cuckoo was to be heard on its other side. In a moment, Griselda had opened it, and was speeding down the long passage in the dark, guided only by the voice from time to time heard before her. Cuckoo! Cuckoo! She forgot all about the cold, or rather, she did not feel it, though the floor was of uncarpeted old oak, whose hard, polished surface would usually have felt like ice to a child's soft, bare feet. It was a very long passage, and tonight somehow it seemed longer than ever. In fact, Griselda could have fancied she had been running along it for half a mile or more when at last she was brought to a standstill by finding she could go no further. I don't know why that suddenly got extra... I don't know, just ignore it. Sorry. Suddenly she could go no further. Where was she? She could not imagine. Must be a part of the house she'd never explored in the day. Oh, it's the breeze. Must be, because now it's back to normal. And yes, you may hear helicopters and planes and vehicles on the road and things like that. Now I've got the skylights open. I've only just noticed because there's a helicopter outside going overhead. Where was she? She could not imagine. It must be a part of the house she'd never explored in the daytime. She decided. In front of her was a little stair running downwards and ending in a doorway. Is this the one that goes outside? Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out, I hope. How peculiar. No, I want you out of the way. Thank you very much. It ended in a doorway. All this Griselda could see by a bright light that streamed in by the keyhole. So it's bright light outside. And through the chinks around the door, a light so brilliant that the little girl blinked her eyes and for a moment felt quite dazzled and confused. It came so suddenly, she said to herself. Someone must have lighted a lamp in there all at once, but it can't be a lamp. It's too bright for a lamp. It's more like the sun, but however could the sun be shining in a room in the middle of the night? What shall I do? Shall I open the door and peep in? Excuse me, itchy. Try to itch it in such a way that it makes it feel like it's staying itched. Shall I open the door and peep in? Cuckoo, cuckoo, came the answer, soft but clear, from the other side of the door. Can it be a trick of the cuckoo's to get me out into the garden? Thought Griselda, and for the first time since she had run out of her room, a shiver of cold made her teeth chatter and her skin feel creepy. Cuckoo, cuckoo, sounded again, nearer this time. It seemed to Griselda. He's waiting for me. I will trust him, she said resolutely. He's always been good and kind, and it's horrid of me to think he's going to trick me. She ran down the little stairs. She seized the handle of the door. It turned easily. The door opened, and closed again noiselessly behind her. And what do you think she saw? I have no idea. Let's read on and find out. Shut your eyes for a minute, Griselda, said the cuckoo's voice beside her. The light will dazzle you at first. Shut them, and I will brush them with a little daisy dew to strengthen them. Ooh. Griselda did as she was told. She felt the tip of the cuckoo's softest feather pass gently 2 or 3 times over her eyelids, and a delicious scent seemed immediately to float before her. I didn't know daisies had any scent, she remarked. Perhaps you didn't. You forget, Griselda, that you have a great... Oh, please don't, Cuckoo. Please, please don't, dear Cuckoo, she exclaimed, dancing about with her hands clasped in entreaty, but her eyes still firmly closed. Don't say that, and I promise to believe whatever you tell me. And how soon may I open my eyes, please, Cuckoo? Turn round slowly 3 times. That will give the dew time to take effect, said the Cuckoo. Here goes. 1, 2, 3. There now. Griselda opened her eyes. And that's the end of the chapter. Right. We're going to read chapter 7. Do you need to rush off to the loo or anything before I get started on the next chapter? Itchy. That's one of the things about the heat, is it makes me feel itchier than normal. I don't like it. Okay, because I'm starting the chapter now. Here we go. Chapter 7, Butterfly Land. I'd be a butterfly. That's what she'd said, remember? And that's our epigraph, is I'd be a butterfly. Griselda opened her eyes. What did she see? The loveliest, loveliest garden that ever or never a little girl's eyes saw. As for describing it, I cannot. I must leave a good deal to your fancy. It was just a delicious garden. There was a charming mixture of all that is needed to make a garden perfect. Grass, velvety lawn rather than just normal grass. Water, for a little brook ran tinkling in and out, playing bo-peep among the bushes. Trees, of course, and flowers, of course, flowers of every shade and shape. But all these beautiful things Griselda did not at first give as much attention to as they deserved. Her eyes were so occupied with a quite unusual sight that met them. This was butterflies. Not that butterflies are so very uncommon, but butterflies, as Griselda saw them, I am quite sure, children, none of you ever saw or are likely to see. There were such enormous numbers of them, and the variety of their colours and sizes was so great. They were fluttering about everywhere. The garden seemed actually alive with them. Griselda stood for a moment in silent delight, feasting her eyes on the lovely things before her, enjoying the delicious sunshine which kissed her poor little bare feet and seemed to wrap her all up in its warm embrace. Then she turned to her little friend. "Cuckoo," she said, "I thank you so much. This is fairyland at last." The cuckoo smiled. "I was going to say, but that would be a figure of speech only, would it not?" He shook his head gently. "No, Griselda," he said kindly, "this is only butterfly land, not fairyland." "Butterfly land," repeated Griselda with a little disappointment in her tone. "Well," said the cuckoo, "that is where you were wishing to be yesterday, isn't it?" Griselda did not particularly like these allusions to yesterday. She thought it would be as well to change the subject. "It's a beautiful place, whatever it is," she said, "and I'm sure, Cuckoo, I'm very much obliged to you for bringing me here. Now may I run about and look at everything? How delicious it is to feel the warm sunshine again. I didn't know how cold I was. Look, Cuckoo, my toes and fingers are quite blue. They're only just beginning to come right again. I suppose the sun always shines here. How nice it must be to be a butterfly. Don't you think so, Cuckoo? Nothing to do but fly about?" She stopped at last, quite out of breath. "Griselda," said the cuckoo, "if you want me to answer your questions, you must ask them one at a time. You may run about and look at everything if you like, but you had better not be in such a hurry. You will make a great many mistakes if you are. You have made some already." "How?" asked Griselda. "Have the butterflies nothing to do but fly about? Watch them." Griselda watched. "They do seem to be doing something," she said at last, "but I can't think what. They seem to be nibbling at the flowers, and then they fly away, something like bees gathering honey." "Butterflies don't gather honey, Cuckoo." "No," said the cuckoo, "they are filling their paint boxes." "What do you mean?" said Griselda. "Come and see," said the cuckoo. He flew quietly along in front of her, leading the way through the prettiest paths in all the pretty garden. The paths were arranged in different colours, as it were. That is to say, the flowers growing along their sides were not all mixty-maxty, but one shade after another in regular order, from the palest blush pink to the very deepest damask crimson. Then again from the softest greenish blue of the small grass forget-me-not to the rich warm tinge of the brilliant cornflower. Every tint was there, shades to which, though not exactly strange to her, Griselda could yet have given no name, for the daisy dew, you see, had sharpened her eyes to observe delicate variations of colour, as she had never done before. "How beautifully the flowers are planned," she said to the cuckoo. "Is it just to look pretty, or why?" "That's a good question." "It saves time," replied the cuckoo. "The fetch and carry butterflies know exactly where to go for the tint the world flower painters want." "Who are the fetch and carry butterflies?" said and who are the world flower painters? Asked Griselda. "Wait a bit and you'll see, and use your eyes," answered the cuckoo. "It'll do your tongue no harm to have a rest now and then." That's a good way to put it. It'll do your tongue no harm to have a rest now and then. How to tell someone they're a chatterbox. Griselda thought it as well to take his advice, though not particularly relishing the manner in which it was given. She did use her eyes, and as she and the cuckoo made their way along the flower alleys, she saw that the butterflies were never idle. They came regularly in little parties of 2s and 3s, and nibbled away, as she called it, at flowers of the same colour but different shades, till they had got what they wanted. Then off flew butterfly number 1 with perhaps the palest tint of maize or yellow or lavender, whichever he was in quest of, followed by number 2 with the next deeper shade of the same, and number 3 bringing up the rear. Griselda gave a little sigh. "What's the matter?" asked the cuckoo. "They work very hard," she replied in a melancholy tone. "It's a busy time of year," observed the cuckoo dryly. After a while they came to what seemed to be a sort of centre to the garden. It was a huge glass house with numberless doors, in and out of which butterflies were incessantly flying, reminding Griselda again of bees and a beehive. But she made no remark till the cuckoo spoke again. "Come in," he said. Griselda had to stoop a good deal, but she did manage to get in without knocking her head or doing any damage. Inside was just a mass of butterflies, a confused mass, it seemed at first, but after a while she saw that it was the very reverse of confused. The butterflies were all settled in rows on long, narrow white tables, and before each was a tiny object about the size of a flattened-out pin's head. Tiny, tiny, tiny little dot. Just a minute. I'm just checking to see what pictures I've got. Don't think it's that one. And before each was a tiny object about the size of a flattened-out pin's head, which he was most carefully painting with one of his tentacles, which from time to time he moistened by rubbing it on the head of a butterfly waiting patiently behind him. Behind this butterfly again stood another who, after a while, took his place while the first attendant flew away. So they're providing the colour, the paint. "To fill his paint box again," remarked the cuckoo, who seemed to read Griselda's thoughts. "But what are they painting, cuckoo?" she inquired eagerly. "All the flowers in the world." "Ah, itchy, why?" "All the flowers in the world," replied the cuckoo. "Autumn, winter, and spring, they're hard at work. It's only just for the 3 months of summer that the butterflies have any holiday, and then a few stray ones now and then wander up to the world, and people talk about idle butterflies. And even then it isn't true that they are idle. They go up to take a look at the flowers to see how their work has turned out, and many a damaged petal they repair, or touch up a faded tint, though no one ever knows it." "I know it now," said Griselda. "I'll never talk about idle butterflies again, never. But, cuckoo, do they paint all the flowers here too? What a fearful lot they must have to do." "No," said the cuckoo, "the flowers down here are fairy flowers. They never fade or die. They are always just as you see them. But the colours of your flowers are all taken from them, as you have seen. Of course, they don't look the same up there," he went on, with a slight contemptuous shrug of his cuckoo shoulders. "The coarse air and the ugly things about must take the bloom off. The wild flowers do the best, to my thinking. People don't meddle with them in their stupid, clumsy way. Or people crossbreeding flowers, or rebreeding flowers to get different versions of the shape of them and the colour of them and all that sort of stuff. That's the meddling, I think. But how do they get the flowers sent up to the world, Cuckoo? She asked. They're packed up, of course, and taken up at night when all of you are asleep, said the Cuckoo. They're painted on elastic stuff, you see, which fits itself as the plant grows. Why, if your eyes were as they are usually, Griselda, you wouldn't even see the petals the butterflies are painting now. And the packing up, said Griselda. Do the butterflies do that too? No, said the Cuckoo. The fairies look after that. How wonderful! Exclaimed Griselda, but before the Cuckoo had time to say more, a sudden tumult filled the air. It was butterfly dinner time, and I think that's a good moment to pause and have my drink. Are you hungry, Griselda? Said the Cuckoo. Not so very, said Griselda. It's just as well, perhaps, that you're not, he remarked, for I don't know that you'd be much the better for dinner here. Why not? Inquired Griselda curiously. What do they have for dinner? Honey? I like that very well, spread on top of butter and bread and butter, of course. I don't think I should care to eat it alone. You won't get any honey, the Cuckoo was beginning, but he was interrupted. Two handsome butterflies flew into the great glass hall and, making straight for the Cuckoo, alighted on his shoulders. They fluttered about him for a minute or two, evidently rather excited about something, then flew away again as suddenly as they had appeared. Those were royal messengers, said the Cuckoo, turning to Griselda. They have come with a message from the King and Queen to invite us to a banquet, which is to be held in honour of your visit. What fun! Cried Griselda. Do let us go at once, Cuckoo. But, oh, dear me, she went on with a melancholy change of tone. I was forgetting, Cuckoo. I can't go to the banquet. I have nothing on but my nightgown. I never thought of it before, for I'm not a bit cold. Never mind, said the Cuckoo. I'll soon have that put to rights. He flew off and was back almost immediately, followed by a whole flock of butterflies. They were of a smaller kind than Griselda had hitherto seen, and they were of two colours only. Half were blue, half yellow. They flew up to Griselda, who felt for a moment as if she were really going to be suffocated by them, but only for a moment. There seemed a great buzz and flutter about her, and then the butterflies set to work to dress her. And how do you think they dressed her? With themselves. They arranged themselves all over her in the cleverest way. One set of blue ones clustered around the hem of her little nightgown, making a thick ruche, as it were, and then there came 2 or 3 thinner rows of yellow and then blue again. Round her waist they made the loveliest belt of mingled blue and yellow, and all over the upper part of her nightgown, in and out among the pretty white frills which Dorcas herself goffered, that's the name for putting them on, like that, so nicely, they made themselves into fantastic trimmings of every shape and kind, bows and rosettes. I cannot tell you what they did not imitate. Perhaps the prettiest ornament of all was the coronet or wreath they made of themselves for her head, dotting over her curly brown hair too, with butterfly spangles which quivered like dewdrops as she moved about. No one would have known Griselda. She looked like a fairy queen, or princess at least, for even her little white feet had what looked like butterfly shoes upon them, though these, you will understand, were only a sort of make-believe, as of course the shoes were soleless. It was just on the tops of her feet. And this is the illustration they've got in this book. This is nowhere near as ornate as what we have had described to us. You can see that it's blues and yellows. There you go. See if I can get it to go back to the picture. No, go back from the picture. Back. There, okay. Each of these books handles illustrations differently on the iPad. I don't know what the difference is. Some of them you can tap and they'll enlarge, and then you tap them again and they'll go away. Some of them you tap and they enlarge, and then you tap outside of them and they go away, but then you have to hit the word back after that. Some of them you can tap them and nothing happens, and some of them you can stretch, pinch, to make them bigger and smaller, and some of them you can't do that either. So there you go. As of course the shoes were soulless. "Now," said the cuckoo, when at last all was quiet again and every blue and yellow butterfly seemed settled in his place, "Now, Griselda, come and look at yourself." He led the way to a marble basin into which fell the waters of one of the tinkling brooks that were to be found everywhere about the garden, and bade Griselda look into the water mirror. It danced about rather, because there's water splashing into it, yes it would, but still she was quite able to see herself. She peered in with great satisfaction, turning herself round so as to first see over one shoulder and then over the other. I did notice that she looked like she was sort of twisting around the way she was standing in the illustration. Highlight. "It is lovely," she said at last, "but Cuckoo, I'm just thinking, how shall I possibly be able to sit down without crushing ever so many?" "Bless you, you needn't trouble about that," said the cuckoo. "The butterflies are quite able to take care of themselves. You don't suppose you're the first little girl they have ever made a dress for?" Do we know who the other one was? Griselda said no more, but followed the cuckoo, walking rather gingerly, notwithstanding his assurances that the butterflies could take care of themselves. At last the cuckoo stopped in front of a sort of banked-up terrace, in the centre of which grew a strange-looking plant with large, smooth, spreading-out leaves. And on the two topmost leaves, their splendid wings glittering in the sunshine, sat two magnificent butterflies. They were many times larger than any Griselda had yet seen. In fact, the cuckoo himself looked rather small beside them, and they were so beautiful that Griselda felt overawed. You could not have said what colour they were, for at the faintest movement they seemed to change into new colours, each more exquisite than the last. Perhaps I should best give you an idea of them by saying that they were like living rainbows. "Are those the king and queen?" asked Griselda in a whisper. "Yes," said the cuckoo. "Do you admire them?" "I should rather think I do," said Griselda. "But, Cuckoo, do they never do anything but lie there in the sunshine?" "Oh, you silly girl," exclaimed the cuckoo, always jumping at conclusions. "No, indeed, that is not how they manage things in Butterfly Land. The king and queen have worked harder than any other butterflies. They are chosen every now and then out of all the others as being the most industrious and the cleverest of all the world flower painters, and then they are allowed to rest and are fed on the finest essences, so that they grow as splendid as you see. But even now they are not idle. They superintend all the work that is done and choose all the new colours." "Dear me," said Griselda under her breath. "How clever they must be." Just then the butterfly king and queen stretched out their magnificent wings and rose upwards, soaring proudly into the air. "Are they going away?" said Griselda in a disappointed tone. "Oh no," said the cuckoo, "they are welcoming you. Hold out your hands." Griselda held out her hands and stood gazing up into the sky. In a minute or two the royal butterflies appeared again, slowly, majestically, circling downwards, till at length they alighted on Griselda's little hands, the king on the right, the queen on her left, almost covering her fingers with their great dazzling wings. "You do look nice now," said the cuckoo, hopping back a few steps and looking up at Griselda approvingly. "But it's time for the feast to begin, as it won't do for us to be late." The king and queen appeared to understand. They floated away from Griselda's hands and settled themselves, this time at one end of a beautiful little grass plot or lawn just below the terrace where grew the large-leaved plant. This was evidently their dining room, for no sooner were they in their places than butterflies of every kind and colour came pouring in masses from all directions. Butterflies small and butterflies large, butterflies light and butterflies dark, butterflies blue, pink, crimson, green, gold colour, every colour, and far, far more colours than you could possibly imagine. They all settled down round the sides of the grassy dining table, and in another minute a number of small white butterflies appeared, carrying among them flower petals carefully rolled up, each containing a drop of liquid. One of these was presented to the king and then one to the queen, who each sniffed at their petal for an instant and then passed it on to the butterfly next to them, whereupon fresh petals were handed to them, which they again passed on. "What are they doing, Cuckoo?" said Griselda. "That's not eating." "It's their kind of eating," he replied. "They don't require any other kind of food than a sniff of perfume, and as there are perfumes extracted from every flower in butterfly land, and there are far more flowers than you could count between now and Christmas, you must allow there is plenty of variety of dishes." Said Griselda. "I suppose there is. But all the same, Cuckoo, it's a very good thing I'm not hungry, isn't it? May I pour the scent on my pocket handkerchief when it comes round to me? I have my handkerchief here, you see. Isn't it nice that I brought it? It was under my pillow, and I wrapped it around my hand to open the shutter, for the hook scratched it once." "You may pour 1 drop on your handkerchief," said the Cuckoo, "but not more. I shouldn't like the butterflies to think you greedy." But Griselda grew very tired of the scent feast long before all the petals had been passed around. The perfumes were very nice, certainly, but there were such quantities of them, double quantities in honour of the guest, of course. Griselda screwed up her handkerchief into a tight little ball so that the 1 drop of scent should not escape from it, and then she kept sniffing at it impatiently till at last the Cuckoo asked her what was the matter. "I'm so tired of the feast," she said. "Do let us do something else, Cuckoo." "It is getting rather late," said the Cuckoo. "But see, Griselda, they are going to have an air dance now." "What's that?" said Griselda. "Look, and you'll see." Flocks and flocks of butterflies were rising a short way into the air, and then there arranging themselves in bands according to their colours. "Come up to the bank," said the Cuckoo to Griselda. "You'll see them better." Griselda climbed up the bank, and from there she could look down on the butterfly show. She saw it beautifully. The long strings of butterflies twisting in and out of each other in the most wonderful way, like ribbons of every hue, plaiting themselves and then in an instant unplaiting themselves again. Then the king and queen placed themselves in the centre, and round in moving circles, twisted and untwisted the brilliant bands of butterflies. "It's like a kaleidoscope," said Griselda. "And now it's like those twisty, twirly, dissolving views that Papa took me to see once. It's just like them." I'm not quite sure what she's referring to there. "Oh, how pretty. Cuckoo, are they doing it all on purpose to please me?" "A good deal," said the Cuckoo. "Stand up and clap your hands loud 3 times to show them you're pleased." Griselda obeyed. Clap number 1, all the butterflies rose up into the air in a cloud. Clap number 2, they all fluttered and twirled and buzzed about as if in the greatest excitement. Clap number 3, they all turned in Griselda's direction with a rush. "They're going to kiss you, Griselda," cried the Cuckoo. Griselda felt her breath going. Up above her was the vast feathery cloud of butterflies fluttering, rushing down upon her. "Cuckoo, Cuckoo," she screamed, "they'll suffocate me. Oh, Cuckoo!" "Shut your eyes and clap your hands very loud, called out the Cuckoo. And just as Griselda clapped her hands, holding her precious handkerchief between her teeth, she heard him give his usual cry, "Cuckoo, Cuckoo!" Clap. Where were they all? Griselda opened her eyes. Garden, butterflies, Cuckoo, all had disappeared. She was in bed, and Dorcas was knocking at the door with the hot water. First thing in the morning, time to get up. "Miss Grizzle said I was to wake you at your usual time this morning, missy," she said. "I hope you're don't feel too tired to get up." "Tired? I should think not," replied Griselda. "I was awake this morning ages before you, I can tell you, my dear Dorcas. Come here for a minute, Dorcas, please," she went on. "There now, sniff my handkerchief. What do you think of that?" "It's beautiful," said Dorcas. "It's out of the big blue china pot on your auntie's table, isn't it, missy?" "Stuff and nonsense," replied Griselda. "It's scent of my own, Dorcas. Aunt Grizzle never had any like it in her life." "That's an assumption." There now, please give me my slippers. I want to get up and look over my lessons for Mr. Knee-breeches before he comes. Dear me, she added to herself as she was putting on her slippers, how pretty my feet did look in the blue butterfly shoes. It was very good of the cuckoo to take me there, but I don't think I shall ever wish to be a butterfly again. Now I know how hard they work, but I'd like to do my lessons well today. I fancy it'll please the dear old cuckoo. And that's the end of the chapter. Oh my goodness. This story's going all over the place. I don't know if this inspired one of the books by Edith Howes. She was a New Zealand school teacher who wrote a bunch of children's fairy tales, fairy stories, fantasy stories. I've read a couple to you, but they were not particularly good examples. They were the only ones I could get because New Zealand hasn't got a particularly good history of digitising their old books, even if they are technically in public domain. And if I ever find the one that I really have good memories of, what I have fond memories of, I'll probably have a look through it myself first, and if it's actually good enough, maybe I'll read it to you. I'm pretty sure the Flower Fairies books are not public domain, but those ones are more like an alphabet and that sort of thing. Okay, here we go. Chapter 8, Master Phil. Who comes from the world of flowers, daisy and crocus and sea bluebell and violet shrinking in dewy cell. That's sly cells that know the secrets of night, when earth is bathed in fairy light, scarlet and blue and golden flowers. And that's your epigraph. Graph, words written. And so, Mr. Knee-breeches had no reason to complain of his pupil that day, and Miss Grizzle congratulated herself more heartily than ever on her wise management of children. Itchy nose. And Miss Tabitha repeated that Sister Grizzle might indeed congratulate herself. And Griselda became gradually more and more convinced that the only way as yet discovered of getting through hard tasks is to set to work and do them, also that grumbling, as things are at present arranged in this world, does not always, nor may I say often, do good. Well, it's good that she's learning these things. Furthermore, that an ill-tempered child is not, on the whole, likely to be as much loved as a good-tempered one. Lastly, that if you wait long enough, winter will go and spring will come. There you go. For this was the case this year after all. Spring had only been sleepy and lazy, and in such a case, what could poor old winter do but fill the vacant post till she came? Why he should be so scolded and reviled for faithfully doing his best, as he often is, I really don't know. Not that all the ill words he gets have much effect on him. He comes again as just as usual, whatever we say or do to, or say of or to him. I suppose his feelings may have long ago been frozen up, or surely before this he would have taken offence. Yeah, we are a bit rude about winter, I have to admit. Well for us that he has not done so. But when the spring did come at last this year, it would be impossible for me to tell you how Griselda enjoyed it. It was like new life to her, as well as to the plants and flowers and birds and insects. Hitherto, you see, she had been able to see very little of the outside of her aunt's house. And charming as the inside was, the outside, I must say, was still charminger. That's in quotation marks because it's not a real word. There seemed no end to the little up and down paths and alleys leading to rustic seats and quaint arbours, no limit to the little pine wood down into which led the dearest little zigzaggy path you ever saw. So that's right, this house has got quite a bit of land behind it. That includes going down the hillside behind them into a wood. No limits to the little pine wood down into which led the dearest little zigzaggy path you ever saw, all bordered with snowdrops and primroses and violets, and later on with periwinkles and wood anemones and those bright, starry white flowers whose name no two people agree about. And I don't think she means daisies. I think she's talking about something else. This wood path was the place, I think, which Griselda loved the best. The bowling green was certainly very delightful, and so was the terrace where the famous roses grew. But lovely as the roses were, I'm speaking just now, of course, of later on in the summer, when they were all in bloom, Griselda could not enjoy them as much as the wild flowers, for she was forbidden to gather or touch them, except with her funny round nose. That's the roses. You may scent them, my dear, said Miss Grizzle, who was of the opinion that smell was not a pretty word, but I cannot allow anything more. And Griselda did scent them, I assure you. She burrowed her whole rosy face into the big ones, but gently, for she didn't want to spoil them, both for her aunt's sake and because, too, she had a greater regard for flowers now that she knew the secret of how they were painted, and what a great deal of trouble the butterflies take about them. But after a while one grows tired of scenting roses, and even the trying to walk straight across the bowling green with her eyes shut from the arbour at one side to the arbour exactly like it at the other grew stupid, though no doubt it would have been capital fun with a companion to applaud or criticise. So the wood path became Griselda's favourite haunt. As the summer grew on, she began to long more than ever for a companion, not so much for play as for someone to play with. She had lessons, of course, just as many as in the winter, but in the long days there seemed to come quite unaccountable increase of playtime. A quite unaccountable, yeah. And Griselda sometimes found it hang heavy on her hands. She had not seen or heard anything of the cuckoo either, save, of course, in his official capacity of time-teller, for a very long time. I suppose, she thought, he thinks I don't need amusing, now that the fine days are come and I can play in the garden, and certainly if I had anyone to play with, the garden would be perfectly lovely. But failing companions, she did the best she could for herself, and this is why she loved the path down into the woods so much. There was a sort of mystery about it. It might have been the path leading to the cottage of Red Riding Hood's grandmother, or a path leading to fairyland itself. There were all kinds of odd, nice, funny noises to be heard there, in one part of it especially, where Griselda made herself a seat of some moss-grown stones, and where she came so often that she got to know all the little flowers growing close around about, and even the particular birds whose nests were hard by. She used to sit there and fancy that she heard the wood elves chattering under their breath, or the little underground gnomes and kobolds hammering at their fairy forges. Now, I don't know what a kobold is in this context, but you can look that one up. Kobold. Kobold. And the tinkling of the brook in the distance sounded like the enchanted bells around the necks of the fairy kine, who are sent out to pasture sometimes on the upper world hillsides. Kine. I think that's livestock of some sort in fairy terms, but I don't know. For Griselda's head was crammed full, perfectly full, of fairy lore, and the mandarin's country and butterfly land were quite as real to her as the everyday world about her, but all this time she was not forgotten by the cuckoo, as you will see. One day she was sitting in her favourite nest, feeling, notwithstanding the sunshine and the flowers and the soft sweet air and the pleasant sounds all about, rather dull and lonely, for though it was only May, it was really quite a hot day, and Griselda had been all the morning at her lessons and had tried very hard and done them very well, and now she felt as if she deserved some reward. Suddenly, in the distance, she heard a well-known sound. Cuckoo, cuckoo. Can that be the cuckoo? She said to herself, and in a moment she felt sure that it must be, for some reason that I do not know enough about the habits of real flesh and blood cuckoos to explain, the bird was not known in the neighbourhood where Griselda's aunts lived. So for some reason, real-life cuckoos aren't there, only the cuckoo clock cuckoo, I guess. Some 20 miles or so further south it was heard regularly, but all this spring Griselda had never caught the sound of its familiar note, and she now remembered hearing it never came to these parts. So It must be my Cuckoo, she said to herself. He must be coming out to speak to me. How funny. I've never seen him by daylight. She listened. Yes, again, there it was. Cuckoo, cuckoo, as plain as possible, and nearer than before. Cuckoo, cried Griselda, do come and talk to me. It's such a long time since I have seen you, and I have nobody to play with. But there was no answer. Griselda held her breath to listen, but there was nothing to be heard. Unkind Cuckoo, she exclaimed. He's tricking me, I do believe, and today, too, just when I was so dull and lonely. The tears came into her eyes, and she was beginning to think herself very badly used, when suddenly a rustling in the bushes beside her made her turn round, more than half expecting to see the Cuckoo himself. But it was not he. The rustling went on for a minute or two, without anything making its appearance. For the bushes were pretty thick just there, and anyone scrambling up from the pine wood below would have had rather hard work to get through, and indeed for a very big person such a feat would have been altogether impossible. I think that's just a big vehicle on the road. Hope it's not about to rain. It was not a very big person, however, who was causing all the rustling and crunching of branches and general commotion which now absorbed Griselda's attention. She sat watching for another minute in perfect stillness, afraid of startling by the slightest movement the squirrel or rabbit or creature of some kind which she expected to see. At last, was that a squirrel or a rabbit? That rosy round face, with shaggy fair hair falling over the eager blue eyes, and a general look of breathlessness and overheatedness and determination. A squirrel or a rabbit? No, indeed, but a very sturdy, very merry, very ragged little boy. Where are that Cuckoo? Does you know? Were the first words he uttered as soon as he had fairly shaken himself, though not by any means all his clothes, free of the bushes, for ever so many pieces of jacket and knickerbockers, not to speak of one boot and half his hat, had been left behind on the way, and found his breath to say something. Griselda stared at him for a moment without speaking. She was so astonished. It was months since she had spoken to a child, almost since she had seen one, and about children younger than herself she knew very little at any time, being the baby of the family at home, you see, and having only big brothers older than herself for playfellows. "Who are you?" she said at last. "What's your name, and what do you want?" "My name's Master Phil, and I want that Cuckoo," answered the little boy. He came up this way, I'm sure he did, for he called me all the way." "He's not here," said Griselda. Maybe he was bringing Master Phil up here to meet Griselda. "He's not here," said Griselda, shaking her head. "And this is my aunt's garden. No one's allowed to come here but friends of theirs. You'd better go home, and you have torn your clothes so." This aren't a garden," replied the little fellow undauntedly, looking round him. "This are a wood. There are bluebells and primroses here, and that shows it aren't a garden, not anybody's garden, I mean, with walls round for nobody to come in." "But it is," said Griselda, getting rather vexed. "If it isn't a garden, it's grounds, private grounds, and nobody should come without leave. This path leads down to the wood, and there's a door in the wall at the bottom to get into the lane. You may go down that way, little boy. No one comes scrambling up the way you did." "But I want to find the Cuckoo," said the little boy. "I do so want to find the Cuckoo." His voice sounded almost as if he were going to cry, and his pretty, hot, flushed face puckered up. Griselda's heart smote her. She looked at him more carefully. He was such a very little boy, after all. She did not like to be cross to him. "How old are you?" she asked. "5 and a bit. I had a birthday after the summer, and if I'm good, Nurse says I'll have another one after next summer too. Do you ever have birthdays?" he went on, peering up at Griselda. "Nurse says she used to when she was young, but she never has any now." "Have you a nurse?" asked Griselda, rather surprised, for to tell the truth, from Master Phil's appearance, she had not felt at all sure what sort of little boy he was, or rather what sort of people he belonged to. "Of course I have a nurse, and a mother too," said the little boy, opening wide his eyes in surprise at the question. "Haven't you?" Perhaps you're too big, though. People leave off having nurses and mothers when they're big, don't they? Just like birthdays. I don't. I won't. I won't never leave off having a mother anyway. I don't care so much about a nurse and birthdays. Not quite so much. Did you care when you had to leave off when you got too big? I haven't had to leave off because I got big, said Griselda sadly. I left off when I was much littler than you. She went on, unconsciously speaking as Phil would best understand her. My mother died. I'm very sorry, said Phil, and in a way in which he said it quite overcame Griselda's unfriendliness. But perhaps you got a nice nurse. My nurse is rather nice, but she would cold me today. Cold me today, won't she? He added, laughing, pointing to the terrible rents in his garments. Tears. These are my very oldest things. That's a good thing, isn't it? Nurse says I don't look like Master Phil in these, but when I have on my blue welpet, then I look like Master Phil. I shall have my blue welpet when Mother comes. Is your mother away? Asked Griselda. Oh, yes, she's been away a long time, so Nurse came here to take care of me at the farmhouse. You know, Mother was ill, but she's better now, and some day she'll come too. Do you like being at the farmhouse? Have you anybody to play with? Asked Griselda. Phil shook his curly head. I never have anybody to play with, he said. I'd like to play with you if you're not too big. And do you think you could help me find the cuckoo? He asked insinuatingly. What do you know about the cuckoo? Said Griselda. He called me, said Phil. He called me lots of times, and today Nurse was busy, so I thought I'd come. And do you know, he added mysteriously, I do believe the cuckoo's a fairy, and when I find him, I'm going to ask him to show me the way to fairyland. He says we must all find the way ourselves, said Griselda, quite forgetting to whom she was speaking. Does he? Cried Phil in great excitement. Do you know him then? And have you asked him? Oh, do tell me. Griselda recollected herself. You couldn't understand, she said. Some day perhaps I'll tell you. I mean, if I ever see you again. But I may see you again, said Phil, settling himself down comfortably beside Griselda on her mossy stone. You'll let me come, won't you? I like to talk about fairies, and Nurse doesn't understand, and if the cuckoo knows you, perhaps that's why he called me to come play with you. Just a moment, I do have an illustration here. Not from the book. Oh, I know what that one's meant to be. So this is the little boy and Griselda sitting on a mossy rock in the woods. Come on, go back to where you came. Thank you. I will put this other picture up though, because it's not actually where we are in the story. This is when I find it, not that one, that one. So that's where this is where we had got to, and then this one here, let's turn that keyword off. This one here is when she's got the butterflies on her nightgown, making it look like a fancy dress. And then this is where the little boy comes out through the shrubs and everything else in the woods to meet her, Master Phil. And now I need to find out. There we go. Right. I'll leave that up there for now. How did he call you? Asked Griselda. First, said Phil gravely, it was in the night. I was asleep and I'd been wishing I had somebody to play with. And then I dreamed of the cuckoo. Such a nice dream. And when I woke it up, I heard him calling me, and I wasn't dreaming then. And then I was in the field. When I was in the field, he called me, but I couldn't find him. And Nurse said, nonsense. And today he called me again, so I came up through the bushes. And mayn't I come again? Perhaps if we both tried together, we could find the way to fairyland. Do you think we could? I don't know, said Griselda dreamily. There's a great deal to learn first, the cuckoo says. Have you learned a great deal? He asked. He called it a gate deal, asked Phil, looking up at Griselda with increased respect. I don't know scarcely nothing. Mother was ill such a long time before she went away, but I know she wanted me to learn to read books, but nurse is too old to teach me. Shall I teach you? Asked Griselda. I can bring some of my old books and teach you here after I've done my own lessons. And then Mother would be surprised when she comes back, said Master Phil, clapping his hands. Oh, do, and when I've learnt to read a great deal, do you think the Cuckoo would show us the way to fairyland? I don't think it was that sort of learning he meant, said Griselda, but I dare say that would help. I think, she went on, lowering her voice a little and looking down gravely into Phil's earnest eyes, I think he means mostly learning to be very good, very, very good, you know. Gooder than you? Said Phil. Oh dear, yes, lots and lots gooder than me, replied Griselda. I think you're very good, observed Phil in a parenthesis. Then he went on with his cross-questioning. Gooder than Mother? I don't know your mother, so how can I tell how good she is, said Griselda. That's a fair answer. I can tell you, said Phil importantly. She's just as good as good. That's what she is. You mean she couldn't be better? Said Griselda, smiling. Yes, that'll do if you like. Would that be good enough for us to be, do you think? We must ask the Cuckoo, said Griselda, but I'm sure it would be a good thing for you to learn to read. You must ask your nurse to let you come here every afternoon, that it's fine weather, and I'll ask my aunt. I needn't ask nurse, said Phil composedly. She'll never know where I am, and I needn't tell her. She doesn't care what I do except tearing my clothes, and then when she scolds me, I don't care. That isn't good, Phil, said Griselda gravely. You'll never be as good if you speak like that. What shall I say then? Tell me, said the little boy submissively. You should ask nurse to let you come to play with me and tell her I'm much bigger than you and I won't let you tear your clothes. And you should tell her you're very sorry you've torn them today. Very well, said Phil. I'll say that. But oh, see, he exclaimed, darting off. There's a field mouse. If only I could catch him. Of course he couldn't catch him, nor could Griselda either, very readily, though she was to do her best. But it was great fun all the same, and the children laughed heartily and enjoyed themselves tremendously, and when they were tired they sat down again and gathered flowers for nosegays. That's those tiny little posies that are just purely for the scent. They look cute too, but it's for the scent. And Griselda was surprised to find how clever Phil was about it. He was much quicker than she at spying out the prettiest blossoms, however hidden behind tree or stone or shrub, and he told her of all the best places for flowers nearby, and where grew the largest primroses and the sweetest violets, in a way that astonished her. You're such a little boy, she said. How do you know so much about flowers? I've had no one else to play with, he said innocently, and then, you know, the fairies are so very fond of them. When Griselda thought it was time to go home, she led little Phil down the wood path and through the door in the wall opening onto the lane. Now you can find your own way home without scrambling through any more bushes, can't you, Master Phil? She said. Yes, thank you. I'll come again to that place tomorrow afternoon, shall I? Asked Phil. I'll know when, after I've had my dinner and raced 3 times round the big field, and then it'll be time. That's how it was today. I should think it would do if you walked 3 times, or twice if you like, round the field. It isn't a good thing to race just when you've had your dinner, observed Griselda sagely. And you mustn't try to come if it isn't fine, for my aunts won't let me out if it rains, even the tiniest bit. And of course you must ask your nurse's leave. Very well, said little Phil as he trotted off. I'll try to remember all those things. I'm so glad you'll play with me again. And if you see the Cuckoo, please thank him. And that's the end of the chapter and of today's reading, because it's now just about 3 o'clock. Oh, I haven't got the clock up there, or if I have, it's behind the illustration. Let's turn that off and see. No, I haven't got the clock up there. It's all right. So, intriguing. Not going anywhere near where I thought it would go. We've visited the mandarins in their house and off to a ball. We've discovered things about butterflies and painting their colours on flowers and things like that. And now we've discovered a little boy who lives currently on a farm out in the countryside, just across or down the lane from the back of where Griselda lives. Totally. No, none of the directions I was expecting this to go. So yeah, she is actually learning. She's learning how to be considerate and kind and helpful and help someone else to understand the need for those things too, is the current stage basically, isn't it? So next time we will be not reading, I think. How far through am I? 229 of 391. So that's 70 pages. 60, 70 pages. I don't know if next time I'm going to be doing Disney Dreamlight Valley with its update, because there's a free update for it, or if I'm actually going to be finishing off the story. I actually don't know which of the two it's going to be. Let's bookmark that and go to the very end of the book and see how many pages on that is. And I'm not going to page through, I'm just going to go like this. It looks like it's got a short story at the very end of the book. I don't understand. Called The Castle in the Loch. And then there's it's called A Legend of Donegal. 346. Where did I say I was up to? 300. That's 346. And where I was the end of Master Phil. And the next chapter is called It's Up and Down the Chimney. 346, and we're at 229. It's 120. No, not 70. It was 170, I was thinking. 120, that's 2 hours. That's tight. I don't know if I'd be able to manage it. I'm not going to decide now. It depends on what the weather's like, whether my computer is coping with the game, because I'm going to be downloading the update because, you know, Steam, all that sort of stuff. And it depends on what's going on around here. So either next time I will be reading more of this book, or next time I will be playing Disney Dreamlight Valley and possibly telling you a little bit about the update that they have just released for Palia, because they've got the winter themed end of the year style of everything. They've got, if you do play Palia, there's currently drops available, or there will be starting tomorrow until nearly the end of December or the beginning of January, I think. The first things are just ordinary consumable items. The second set of things and drops are probably plushies of some sort, and then the third thing in the drops are, I think, a set of outfit glasses that are winter themed for your character in the game. There's a whole lot of other things they're bringing to Palia, but there's also some other things they're bringing to Disney Dreamlight Valley, including possibly, and I don't know how it works because they're not usually very good at doing it when a release first comes out, there's meant to be a team play system coming for Dreamlight Valley. So Friday, 2 days from now, will I be playing Dreamlight Valley, or will I be reading the book? I don't know. We're going to find out when it happens, nearer to the time. So I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for hanging out with me and